Welcome to Crazy Beautiful Truth. I'm your host, Sheila Delaney, and I'm glad that you are here. We're in episode 4, season 2. I'm going to be playing a clip from a previous episode, interview with Shannon Kelly of Coaching Raw, that elicited some pretty strong reactions. And so I want to talk about it here and explore your reaction, your response, what comes up for you when you hear something like this. So I'm going to play for you a brief section of this interview. I saved this clip and I shared it all by itself on some socials, Instagram, LinkedIn, a couple of different places. And I want you to take a listen before I say anything else.
None of us need more information. None of us need to rely, to obtain any more, thoughts. We actually need to practice what we already know.
What comes up for you when you hear that? So if you're anything like my daughters, who are 18 and 21, they are young adult women with interesting minds, and they're launching into this world of college and career. If you heard it as they did, you might hear that Shannon and I are advocating for not valuing lifelong learning. Don't bother taking in information. Don't bother reading anymore. Don't bother with the news. Think that you know it all. Because this is how my girls reacted when they heard Shannon say it. My eldest actually pinged me to ask, was this the whole clip, Mom, or did you get it cut off? Is this what you intended? And I said, yeah, it is. And then she told me that it landed for her as unhelpful and untrue because it sounded like we were saying, don't ever learn anything from anybody else again. My youngest, who's 18, she is headed off to university. She's moving into engineering, and she was much more direct. She just said, that's dumb, Mom. And as she and I talked more about it on a very long road trip, it was so fascinating to get inside her head. She reminded me that I am all about lifelong learning, and she's not wrong. She pointed out that this clip, as she heard it, neither girl listened to the full episode, is the opposite of everything that she understands about me, about her mom. That this seems in direct conflict with my values, including how I raised my kids. And so how could I possibly? So I thanked them both for calling me out, for sharing what came up for them. And partway through my conversation with them, a couple of different things came up. First, I realized they're young. They're just stepping into the world. They've either been in college classes or are about to be. They are being taught by teachers and professors who have knowledge and expertise and authority that my daughters lack about deciding what is valuable and helpful for them to know. They're such neophytes in a world that is going to be so much bigger than them, and I just adore this about them. I kind of hate, to be honest, that they may have this idealism programmed out of them in favor of becoming very good students who learn the content for the test, but I digress. So I'm going to play you the full clip, which gives you a bit of the conversation before this excerpt and a bit of the conversation afterwards.
I love that you said the word practice. That for me now, that has become like you must practice. Like you cannot know your way toward where you want to go. Like you have enough information. Like the thing about AI that's kind of making me a little crazy. I mean, part of me really loves it. Part of me is kind of like, well, tech bro, blah, blah. But there's the thing that is sad about it to me is that none of us need more information. None of us need to rely, to obtain any more, thoughts. We actually need to practice what we already know. We need to, moment by moment, open to what's actually happening. So, all of the knowledge in the books and everything in the world, can be actually a huge distraction from practice.
So first, listening to that, when Shannon and I were speaking, we were talking about purpose and we were talking about presence. We're talking about what it is to be human, what it is to learn to love your own life and to love yourself back into our own lives. I believe now, I'd missed it first, that it lands differently depending on your age and your life stage. And we're going to dig into the practice of me search, noticing what you learn and what you do with it, noticing how it lands for you and also letting your own wisdom and experience shine as one of many valid sources of learning and information. My belief is we all come into the world with some wisdom we didn't earn, that we come in knowing something about the world that the rest of us are going to learn. And we all gain experience, but in our 20s, and I'll even say in our 30s, we are learning. We are figuring out what it means to become an adult, to be an adult, to adult. We're learning what a mortgage is. We're learning about family and relationships, love, career, how to balance all of these things. We're learning that it's more complex than when we just looked up to the adults as kids. We are not talking about stopping learning, but stop only learning without integrating, without putting it into practice. The differences between knowing or learning and embodying and experimenting. Here's what I mean. How many of us have a ton of books? I have a few behind me. I have bookshelves all over my house. I am an avid reader. I do love to learn, and I do love to read. And I went through a stage where suddenly I realized I'm reading all these books, and honestly, they're just making me feel bad about myself. They were pointing out where I was not my own best ally. They are pointing out all the things I could be doing that I'm not doing. They're pointing out what I should be doing that I disagree with. They're pointing to somebody else's experience. And that's not to say that they weren't valuable. But I wasn't doing with that content what I had done with that content in my 30s. Meaning, I would read a book, I would say, these 3 things are gold. I'm going to put these into action tomorrow. And I would try them. I would let myself be affected by other people's knowledge, expertise, wisdom, and offerings of advice and direction. I didn't take it all as absolute. It's just not how I'm wired. But I did try it. I did practice it. Somewhere in my 40s, mid to late 40s, I actually stopped doing that because I started reading more things going, maybe, I don't think so. That's great for some people. And I started seeing exceptions to every single rule. So in my 50s, it makes sense that I decided I'm going to go on an input fast. And I remember the moment I did it. And I was standing at Barnes & Noble, my favorite place to hang out. And I had a couple of books in my hand and I'm standing at the counter and I looked at these books. I was like, what am I actually going to do with these? They were the latest, most recommended. And I was like, oh, but I need to know because this is what my clients are reading. I was like, wait. That is not a good reason necessarily for me to be reading these books, spending my time and energy. And I looked at them, I did buy them, I came home, and I noticed they sat on my shelf. I didn't actually pick them up and read them. So I figured maybe by osmosis, I would just take them in. So I got really curious. If you've been following me at all, you know I'm about the big questions. And when I start to notice disruptions in patterns, or I start to notice, really any reason at all, I start asking questions. And my question to myself was, what is it about these that I actually don't want to pick them up and read them? And I realized that I wanted to know what I thought. I hadn't gone inward to say, wait, I've been an executive coach. I've been facilitating strategic retreats, boards, C-suite work. I've been an attorney. I was a banker before that. I've been a human a real long time now. I have all kinds of experience. What do I know? What is the wisdom that I have? How would I apply my own experience and the input of all of my teachers, including all of the books that I had read up until that stage? And so I made a decision, enough, no more books. And I decided very consciously, and I shared it with friends, I'm going on an input fast. If you know me at all, or if you knew me then, you know this is crazy talk for me. It meant I was not going to read anything besides some fiction for escapism. And what it did is it turned me inward. I started to distill. I think we spend our 20s and our 30s gathering, trying to figure out what do people want from us? Who do I need to be? How do I fit in enough and then make a mark? We're navigating so much complexity and we're looking to others who've been there ahead of us. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're looking to mentors, to wise leaders, and ideally, but not always, we actually have access to them. In this last decade, I would say it has become actually about shedding and releasing the things that are no longer of service to me. So now I have my own experience and work with clients and corporations. I've done enough keynotes at conferences. I've facilitated enough of the right conversations with really smart people to learn that I have a perspective myself. And I realized that I was using these books to make myself wrong, to minimize what I knew. So I learned at that time that the quiet that was left over from taking in these external voices, that included podcasts, books, the way I watched the news changed, who I was watching changed. It made room for my own inner voice to start to rise. And let me tell you, she was tentative at first. It's like, oh, I think this might be true. What if we tried? It was a very tentative first foray into owning some wisdom that, frankly, by 50 I'd earned. Doesn't discount all the other wisdom out there. But now I was a contributor to this. I realized I am a thought leader. There are thoughts stirring around in this brain, connecting dots that had value all in their own right. I started to create content differently. I started to meet my clients differently. I became much more clear about what resonates and what doesn't, and it gave me permission to really love certain people's impact in the world and to really not like other people's impact in the world, even if they were a top 10 book. And help me lean into trusting my own discernment and judgment in a room. So if someone said, well, if you've seen this research, and I'd say, I haven't, tell me about it. And I quit feeling self-conscious about the fact I wasn't up on all the things. None of us in this age, as quickly as things are moving, can be up on all the things. And I realized it cost me absolutely nothing to ask people when they said, well, yeah, but have you read this? I'd say, no, tell me what about that matters to you. Tell me your lens. And it turned out, when I look back, there were many, many opportunities, I think, where that book, that article, that HBR study, or that McKinsey study would come up and they'd say, oh, you read this? And I'd say, oh, yeah. And they'd say, well, how about we apply that? And I'd say, sure. Turned out partway through, we were talking about different things. We used this shortcut to say we'd have looked at this, but because of our unique lenses in the world, we had different takeaways anyway. And so this idea of me not needing to take away all the things, not needing to have the same takeaways as somebody else, meant I could ask for clarity. What about that? What is the highlight for you? How's that going to impact this agenda? What do you want me to speak to from the stage on this? What are we going to do with it? And so the conversations actually became much richer. The other thing I learned I didn't have a name for a good long time. And then one of my teachers from Exchange Approach, Adair Cates, who was one of my first conscious leadership teachers, she talked about me search. And this landed like lightning in my body. And I started to realize people use this term, me search, in all kinds of different ways. And apparently in the scientific community, they don't love that term. Apparently in the scientific community, it means you're supporting research that is about your own biases and your own interests. And it's viewed as kind of self-indulgent. That is not how I'm using this term. It's not how Adair introduced it to me. It's not how I talk about it with my clients. Me search is this idea of practicing studying your own life, studying your own reactions and patterns, and counting your own life as valid data. The book is only as good as it impacts you, as it impacts your relationships, as it impacts your leadership, as it informs the culture of your organization, as it shapes your community leadership, and how you parent your kids. That's the me search. It's to take the book, read the book, and then study it inside of your own context, inside of this ecosystem. That is all my biases, my experience, my traumas, my learnings, my passions, my interests. That's me search. And we don't always need an outside book to stimulate it, but that can be a really good start. The cycle. Here's a me search pattern or rhythm. We take in information through official sources, through watching another family at the park, through overhearing a conversation in an elevator, but we take in information. We mull it over and we decide, this is interesting, or it isn't. If it's interesting, we try something about it on. We let it affect our behavior, our choices, or our thinking. We try it and we observe. We notice, how did that work for me? How did that feel for me? How did that land in the room? And then really here's the punchline, is we have permission to keep what works and discard the rest. It is all an experiment. So in the course of me search, I try it on. I go, well, that almost worked. Discard that. And we do it all over again. So this turns abstract knowledge, data, into information and lived wisdom. So here are the takeaways. Here's what I hope you take away from this: that integration beats accumulation. If there was a race to who owned the most books on the most bookshelves, I was in the running. I remember the day that I boxed up, and my husband at the time, I said, listen, I want to lighten up these bookshelves. If I sort through them, will you just disappear them for me? I don't think I would have the stomach to take them, these beloved words and teachers from school, from other accumulation, business books, philosophy books, human behavior books, trauma books. Would you disappear them for me? And he said yes. And I got rid of 600 books that weekend, and he just took them all away. It was a really big deal. So I had an accumulation, but the integration, what it means now, how I'm using it, became much more important. Second takeaway: life stage shapes this balance between gathering and practicing. If you're in your 20s, if you're in your 30s, accumulation makes sense. But please, 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 I beseech you, use your own wisdom too. Your filter and your lenses in those earlier days of professional life, of personal life, of parenting young kids, you have more wisdom than you realize that you know. So take it all in, learn it, look for the mentors, look for the teachers, be in conversation. That learning is invaluable, but apply your own lens. You know more than you think you know. And third, your own knowing, your own experience is valid and worth practicing. And that counts at 22 and at 75 and at 91, right? What you know and how you practice it in your life helps to shape who you're becoming. It has helped to shape the woman that I am becoming. It has helped to inform this podcast. It helped me to focus and zone in on what am I interested in? Because let's be real, this podcast I started because there are a bunch of conversations I was interested in, and I hope that they will be of service to you. And they won't be for everybody. They're not intended to be. But I'm talking about things I want to talk about, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it, and I hope that that will be contagious and interesting and of service. So here's the invitation, and I'm going to ask you, let me know, because there is some research I want to do on this to add to the me search and some of my hunches and hypotheses. When you pick up a book or press play on a podcast or dig into that research article or that journal publication, what are you most looking for? It might be inspiration. I want to be inspired. I want to feel something. It might be a challenge to your way of thinking. You want new ideas. You want new thoughts, new approaches, something fresh and novel and innovative. Is it that you're looking for permission or validation for how you already show up? That's valid. Are you looking for new ways to modify your behavior? Are you using external resources to troubleshoot a problem that you're facing that you're looking for new ways through? Also good. Or are you looking for actionable truths that you can use right now today? What do you read for? What do you notice? And which things speak to you the most, either through a podcast or any of those other sources? And for our younger listeners, who I speak to with a great deal of respect, younger does not mean anything other than you have less decades on the planet. I wonder what changes for you if you give yourself permission to have your own perspective first. I would love to know if you do, if you wonder about this, if this excerpt, as I first posted it from Shannon Kelly, is something that would have triggered you. Let me know, and let me know why. And then come back. Because the conversations are going to continue. We're meeting with authors. We're meeting with TED speakers. We're meeting with thought leaders. And just having some really incredible conversations. So starting next week, next Wednesday, another episode is going to drop. We're picking conversations that I love because I know they activate me to be at my best in service to you. If you like these conversations and how I think, know that I'm available to hire for everything from keynotes to panel discussions to moderating panel discussions. This is some of my favorite work because I love the idea of working with ideas that are provocative, that are inspirational, that make us think and feel in fresh and new ways and remind us how beautiful it is to be a human.